Is there a world beyond our own? Is there a spiritual dimension that we cannot see or understand? This documentary will explore these questions and more. Are you ready to open your mind to the reality of the miraculous and supernatural? Then join us on this journey into the unknown. We begin by investigating the incredible case of weeping statues that occurred in the quiet town of Lakeridge, Virginia, located about 20 miles south of Washington, D.C. It is important to note right from the start that what you are about to hear involves a supernatural event that has no equal, no precedent in the history of the world. Never has a supernatural event been so closely observed and witnessed by so many credible people, including journalists, TV reporters, lawyers, doctors, federal government employees. Hundreds, if not thousands of people saw statues and icons weep, profusely at times, like never before. One of the witnesses is James Carney. Mr. Carney is a graduate of Harvard Law School and a former law school professor and assistant dean. Mr. Carney wrote a book about the phenomena called the Seton Miracles, Weeping Statues and Other Wonders. Mr. Carney's book is a comprehensive account of what occurred on the outskirts of our nation's capital in 1991 to 1993. And what occurred is the most extensive display of weeping statues and accompanying physical phenomena in the Catholic Church's history. The phenomena included hundreds of statues, crucifixes and even glass images which wept tears and blood before thousands of astonished witnesses. Not only did statues weep like never before, the priest at the center of the events, Father James Bruce, a humble parish priest, dramatically received stigmata wounds replicating the 5 crucifixion wounds of Christ. What makes this case particularly interesting is not only the unprecedented phenomenon of weeping statues of the Virgin Mary, but that the mainstream media widely covered the events. The story of the weeping statues and the priest experiencing the stigmata quickly became a worldwide media sensation. The Washington Post and a throng of local, national and international news organizations descended onto the community to report and investigate the miraculous occurrences. To this day, the spontaneous media frenzy that engulfed the unexplained miraculous events stands as a singular moment in television history in the coverage of mystical religious phenomena. But before we dive into the sensational details of the weeping statues, it is important to understand that 2 clerics who had primary administrative authority over the events, Father Dan Hamilton, the parish priest of St. Elizabeth and Seton Catholic Church in Lakeridge, Virginia, and the Arlington Diocese's Chancellor, Monsignor William Reineke, were secretly and deeply involved in the dark world of pediphilia. And this matters greatly because it is our contention that an open and objective investigation into the supernatural phenomena was never conducted because of the moral depravity and the demonic secrets of the individuals in position to investigate. It is our belief that 1. The administrators did not seek to fully investigate the events because they were uncomfortable with the intense media publicity, and so they sought to move the spotlight away from the Diocese of Arlington by silencing any talk about the event. 2. As the world now knows, the power of silence to hide the truth was an effective tool the Catholic Church frequently used to cover up difficult, even sinister activities like the sexual abuse of thousands of minors among the clergy. The Vatican has said the clerical sex abuse scandal is such a game-changing catastrophe for the Catholic Church that the Pope called it the Church's own 9/11. The head of the Arlington Diocese in Virginia, Bishop John Keating, was keenly aware that statues of the Virgin Mary were weeping in his diocese. In fact, a statue wept in his office before his disbelieving eyes. Despite his own eyewitness account, he nevertheless chose to pursue a strategy of silence for unknown reasons. The bishop stonewalled all inquiries from the media, and for many parishioners this left the impression that the bishop had perhaps condemned the phenomena. Canon law expert, Father Michael Smith Foster writes, The bishop obviously believed that this approach of waiting and watching was the best response to the situation, but it is difficult to reconcile with an ordinary's duties under canon law because the bishop is responsible for public worship in the diocese, and so it is his responsibility to discern what is apparently miraculous and to approve of the gathering for public worship. Should an apparently miraculous event occur, the people may petition the bishop to investigate what is happening. If the bishop determines that there is sufficient evidence for an investigation, he should begin the process which would lead to a decision concerning the supernatural character of the event. Bishops must be diligent in their search for the truth, open to the presence of the miraculous and able to reject what is inauthentic or false. But sadly no investigation ever took place. Our Lady wept in front of the entire world like never before. Her tears were recorded on television cameras for all the world to see, yet, in the end, the Arlington Diocese chose to coldly ignore Our Lady's messages of tears. The Church chose silence, and most disturbing of it all is that the clerics in position to investigate the matter were deeply troubled men. The world would soon discover that the cleric in charge of investigating the weeping statues and the stigmatic priest, Chancellor Monsignor William Reineke, was a serial sexual predator of minors. Sensationally, Father Reineke was also in charge of investigating claims of pediphilia among priests for the Arlington Diocese. All of this was made known after he walked into a nondescript cornfield in Berryville, Virginia, near the Holy Cross Trappist Monastery with a loaded shotgun and killed himself. While the statues of the Virgin Mary were still weeping in August of 1992, the Washington Post reported that Father Reineke was confronted by one of his victims of his sexual abuse. The victim, Joe McDonald, urged Father Reineke to get help and to resign from the priesthood. 2 days after the confrontation, Father Reineke shot himself. His death would leave behind a long shadow of untold secrets, secrets of both good and evil, secrets whose scope, decades later, are today just beginning to be fully understood. The primary theme that runs throughout this documentary is that the Church's powerful culture of silence stonewalled a proper investigation into the extraordinary case of weeping statues, and that this appalling way of managing crises was a root cause that allowed the secret clerical sexual abuse of minors to metastasize inside the Church to the point of almost destroying it. Without being made aware of the culture of silence as a management technique and the scope of clerical sexual abuse of minors inside the Catholic Church, and in particular inside the Arlington Diocese, which we will go into more detail later, it becomes difficult to capture the sensational nature of the incredible case of weeping statues of the Virgin Mary, because over the years Catholics have been told by the diocese to move along, nothing to see here. Well, as it turns out, there is a lot to see here. And thanks to the great work and dedication to the truth by Mr. James Carney and others, you will see that the story of the case of the weeping statues of the Virgin Mary is greater than any work of fiction. As they say in Tinseltown, Hollywood could not make this up. Will you help us bring this important story to the world so the faithful can hear the truth? Let Our Lady's tears be heard. You can support this project at our website mysticpost.com.